so we're Brad and I are here, and I've known Brad for quite some time, and Brad is a real estate agent with eXp Realty. Brad, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You've got an interesting story.
Sure. So I'd spent 23 years in the Marine Corps as an F-18 pilot. Retired in 2013. Started a small remodeling business and got my real estate license, and then moved over to eXp more full-time with real estate last June of 22.
You know, one of the things that is a hot topic is this housing market crash. I mean, Brad, what are you kind of seeing on your end? What are your customers saying, and how are they, what are they saying about this whole situation?
Yeah, they seem to be a little bit worried that we're going to have a crash price-wise similar to what happened back in 2008, 2009. And then on the flip side of that, they're also worried about interest rates and the fact that they've gone up from the historic lows that they were a couple years ago, and how that affects their ability to buy their houses. So I think that's one thing that hopefully we can talk about a little bit today.
Yeah, of course. We all know that, there is uncertainty. I mean, for anybody to say there is an uncertainty about the future, well, that's just because nobody has the crystal ball. So of course the future is uncertain, but I don't think it is as grim as, a lot of people are making it out to be. What I thought was interesting, and this is from the National Association of Realtors. You guys should be able to see this on your screen. 41% of Americans believe the housing market will crash in the next 12 months. That's scary. 72% who believe that the housing market is going to crash think it'll be as bad or worse than 2008, when the world, just came crumbling down. And then 58% of the group that expects a housing crash in the next year say they're actually postponing their housing plans. So this is definitely a hot topic, and personally I think they got it wrong, but we'll dive into that.
Yeah, when I saw this slide, I thought the same thing. It was a little bit surprising that those numbers were as high as they were, but I think some of the stuff that we'll talk about today will hopefully show people that that's actually not the case.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I know is what we're comparing right now is then versus now. How is it different? What has changed? So we want to show you guys a really interesting slide here, and to show you that today is really nothing like that, even though that is what is the comparison at this point. That 2008, 2009 cycle, that last housing cycle, we lost 8 million jobs in America. And the current cycle, we're still growing jobs.
Right.
So not a comparison there. Yeah. Total jobs have gone up, which seems natural because it's just the time difference between then and now. The subprime loans, and personally, as the loan guy, I think that's the biggest thing. We've talked about that on other podcasts. There was a lot of subprime lending going on, and now there's virtually none.
Yeah.
The rules behind mortgages have really tightened up. You can still get them. I'm not saying they're impossible to get, but before it was almost like, do you have a pulse, or can you breathe into the phone? Okay, you're approved. Jeremy, what documents do I need to provide to you? None. Yeah. Just here you go. So it was crazy.
Yeah, and I think you'll really find, especially as we hit a couple more of these topics, that it's pretty obvious that there's some difference between then and now, and so hopefully that will make people feel a little bit better about things.
Sure. Yeah, and new construction was new construction is important, but overbuilding can be a problem, as we all know. So the previous 5 years leading up to the 2008 housing cycle, there was 7.65 million new homes constructed, and now we're looking at 4.6. So I think maybe we found that balance, and not overbuilding. Inventory on the market is drastically different.
Yeah.
Kind of supporting those home prices.
Yep.
And mortgage delinquency is way down, homes in foreclosure way down. Just night and day comparison. I mean, you can see the figures.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think again this chart will hopefully give some people a little bit of some numbers that they can look at and feel a little bit better about things. But I think the supply point right now is nothing like it was then, which will support the prices. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, show a chart that talks about where people think the prices are going to go in the next year.
Right.
And so I think hopefully that will alleviate people's fears of prices coming way down and having other issues like you saw back in 2008.
It always comes down to, we've talked about this in other podcasts before, rates are high compared to what? Home prices are high compared to what? Our market is headed towards disaster compared to what? There's always has to be that comparison point, and I think this is what's so powerful about this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people get caught up in the, in almost a microscopic view of, oh my, the sky is falling. When you step back and take a look at the big picture, 10, 20, 30 years, you'll see that things really aren't all that far out of the norm as far as rates and some other things go.
Exactly. So I want to talk about this next slide here, which is just comical in a way. This goes to show that there's 7 different entities here. Realtor.com, the Mortgage Bankers Association, which is MBA, National Association of Realtors, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, all of these big research firms are kind of well-respected companies. Or entities are all saying dramatically different things. I mean, for one place to say 5.4% increase is what they see home prices increasing in this year, and to have another one saying a negative 5.1 is just kind of hysterical.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
You got to wonder where they get their figures and their data and everything else, or are they just throwing a spitball at the wall and seeing what sticks? So
sure.
But the interesting thing I think out of that chart is, and bottom line is prices are kind of, if you average all that out, I would say prices are probably expected to basically hold about where they're at, not have great big wild fluctuations, at least definitely for the first part of the year.
Sure. And that's something that's good. A lot of people were, I think, excited about, oh man, isn't that great? My home went up 15 or 20% over the past couple years. The answer should really be no, that isn't really good, because things that go up fast also can come down very fast. Yeah. So it's a slow, gradual growth. And it's funny when you average all 7 of these things together, these numbers are all over the place. Like you said, Brad, 0.3% is the average of all 7.
Yeah.
So kind of holding that line, there's not that price appreciation that everybody has become accustomed to. But for there to be a market crash, you would think home prices would have to plummet, right?
Yeah.
What's crashing then?
Doesn't look like much, or at least we're hoping that's the case.
Correct. So, Brad, I'm interested to know from your the perspective of a real estate agent. Over the past year, we've seen it's been night and day, I feel like. I'm sure you feel the same way. But over the past year, from your perspective, what does that supply and demand look like? Home prices, kind of bring this full circle for us from a perspective of a real estate agent.
Yeah, and I think it about this time last year is kind of where the market started to just shift a little bit, and you didn't see the super sellers market where you could list something, you were not guaranteed, but almost guaranteed that was probably going to go for at or above list price in a bidding war.
Yeah.
And you've seen that kind of change over the last year to where now, if you list the house at the appropriate price, it's probably still going to go about list price, maybe a little bit below. But you do see in some cases where people are actually doing some seller concessions and some things that are kind of making it not maybe a full buyer's market, but certainly a little bit more closer to a buyer's market. And when you look at what that did as far as your monthly payment and things like that, with the changes, it's not the doom and gloom that everybody seems to kind of portray, but you can still get into a house that you can afford in a monthly payment that's maybe $50 to $100, $125 more, not drastically $500, $600, $700
Sure.
more.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. It's like, what's the difference if that house was listed for 400,000 early 2022? You got to waive your inspection. You got to go to, $50,000 over asking price, and then the rates were lower. But now you look at now, I'm definitely seeing price reductions on my end. It's something you mentioned to me too. So the rates are a little bit higher, but you're not having to go through all that nonsense to get the house. Truly, in my opinion, much better time for a buyer today than it was 2022, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, but pretty accurate, I think. Again, based on what you were just saying with, you get a chance for some seller concessions. Prices are at least staying at or around listing. So yeah, I think that it's like we were kind of talking. It's shifted just a little bit to the buyer's market. But I do know with real or interest rates being what they are today, I know there's several kind of good options for buyers out there from the lending perspective. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the government got it right this time around in terms of creating a program to help people feel more comfortable in the housing market, and also to keep that economy going, because housing plays such a big part in our overall economy that it is very, very, very important. It can't come to a screeching halt. Right. And that's kind of what it did when people got freaked out by higher interest rates. So I know we've talked about this. This is what we're talking to our clients about, and the clients that you refer to us. The idea of getting those seller credits. Get seller credits. We can tell you how much you would roughly need, and then you have options. We can apply it towards your closing costs, and you bring less to close. We can also have it applied towards your interest rate. There's programs in which the seller can fund a 2% lower interest rate for the first year, a 1% lower interest rate for the second year, and the 3 years and beyond, it goes back to what it was originally was. It's not an adjustable rate mortgage. It's still fixed because it has predictability. Adjustable rate mortgages are just tied to what the market does. This doesn't matter what the market does. It's 2% lower first year, 1% lower 1 year, and then resets. Predictability. So what I like about it is it gives people options, and that's what we're telling them is, if you don't get the seller concessions, you don't have options. So at least just get it. You don't have to make a decision today on whether you want to bring less to close and take a higher payment, or do the buy down and get a lower payment and bring more to closing. You can decide that later, but get them so you have the option. It's those things always work inversely of each other in our world as lenders. The amount of money you need to close and the monthly payment work opposite of each other. So you just kind of have to, as a client, figure out what's most important to me. Keeping more money in the bank and paying a higher payment, or having a lower payment and using more of the money I've saved. So,
gotcha. Well, and I think that if the interest rates kind of continue, it seems like people think that they may continue down. Some people are saying they may be something as maybe get below the 6% level. Yes. So obviously at the end of those 3 years that you were just referring, you could always look at doing a refinance.
Perfect,
the kind of gouge of marry the house and date the rate kind of
right.
applies there, where assuming things continue the way that they look, there may be a good opportunity down the line to refinance and even end up at a lower rate 2 or 3 years.
Couldn't agree more. And again, no crystal ball here, but I think it's highly unlikely that you get to that third year and you actually see that interest rate that you should have had from day one. So amazing things going on, and really what it all comes down to is work with someone you like and trust that can give you options, and be a consultant, and just set you up for success. I don't expect buyers to know what they're doing. How are they going to know what they're doing? Rely on professionals to to give the right advice.
Right. That's why you're here as a lender and I'm there as their real estate agent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.